This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
And welcome in, folks, to the first edition of Open Mic Night in the year 2021. I am your host, Noah Taluki, and on today's episode, Lions losing 37-35 in their final game of the season. They finished 5-11. They're picking 7th in the draft. We'll break down that game for you, and a little bit of tough officiating calls as well. Also, a couple of head coaching candidates and general manager candidates now after the season that are being talked about. We will discuss some more of that, and some Rod Wood comments from Tuesday we're going to get into as well. Also, my take on Matthew Stafford and his future with the Detroit Lions. So it's going to be a Lions-heavy show today, and that's been the dominating news really in Detroit. Hopefully everybody had a great New Year. I definitely did. It was fun watching the ball drop. I know not a lot of people out there in New York City or anything, but it was still fun to watch, and it just, ringing in the new year of 2021. Also, some big college football. Look at that. Ohio State versus Alabama in the final. I didn't expect Ohio State to win that game. I was thinking more Clemson. I thought they would kind of run past Ohio State, but, and they pointed out on the broadcast when Ohio State is not favored and when all the odds are against them, they seem to play really, really well under pressure. And Justin Fields, amazing game, 6 touchdowns. He's a quarterback that some Lions fans want them to draft, but we'll see if he's still around at number 7. But on the other side, Mac Jones, another quarterback that Lions fans may want as well. So it may be worth watching that national championship game if you're a Lions fan, just because you could see the possible future of your franchise at quarterback with the 2 QBs. But we'll get into the quarterback situation a little bit more later on. But as I mentioned, Lions losing 37-35, and the main story of this game was the referees. And I want to address this because I've never been that big of a guy in terms of, the refs cost them the game. The only game that I can kind of think of with the Lions and all that 100% was the Atlanta game from 4 years ago when Golden Tate caught the slant touchdown. Then they ruled him down at the 1, and then it was a 10-second runoff. I think that was a mess up by the officials. They should never have, that never should have occurred. Not even the flag in Dallas in the playoffs. Now look, terrible call. It would have given the Lions a way better chance, but you just never know. This Atlanta game was an actual score into the end zone for a touchdown that the referees, by rule of the 10-second runoff and all that. I still can't stand that. That was the one game that I would say the refs completely ruined it for the Lions, in my opinion. But these calls on Sunday, were pathetic. I'll just say that. The one that was the most pathetic was the stop on 4th down. Tracy Walker, the Lions finally getting a stop on 4th down, 4th and goal. They sacked Kirk Cousins, and literally Tracy rolled off of him. Nothing with the body weight. And plus, I'm going to be honest, I didn't even know you could really rough the passer with the ball. I thought the ball had to be out of his hands. I don't know, because the quarterback's technically a runner if he has the ball in his hand. So I don't know. Maybe that was just me. I just really didn't know that you had to have the ball in your hand for it it to be considered pass interference. I'm just saying the NFL should be ashamed of itself with those referees. I mean that's you can't call those calls in an NFL game. And then the other one, Marvin Jones, his touchdown. Yes, it was a touchdown. I mean, I could see he did bobble it a little bit, but that ball never hit the ground. That would have been 3 touchdowns for Marvin Jones. And if that was his final game in Detroit, one that will be remembered for a while. But the Lions ended up scoring on that drive with DeAndre Swift, but they just could not stop the Vikings on the final drive of the game. At the time, I was a little upset, just because I just thought the referee. I was more upset at the referees and just how bad their decisions were in that game. That's what I was more upset at. I wasn't necessarily upset about the Lions' loss necessarily. It was more of just, why are these officials in the NFL? That's what I was more upset at on Sunday. And also, to fans out there who, say, oh, well, it's good to lose. It's, why did they play Stafford? I get why people would be like that. Obviously because of the better draft pick, and with the new general manager, they have to have the best possible draft position in order for the job, I guess, to be more lucrative to whoever the general manager is. But I'm just saying this: enough with the losing mentality. Some of these fans out there, they just don't understand, I feel like. And I think for these games in particular, you have to really understand it, from the player's perspective, because a lot of these guys, as there's some news in the NFL with some incentives. There's different incentives with contracts. I don't know if any of the Lions players out there had any incentives, but there are incentives and contracts for people to play in that final game for statistics or finishing in the top, whatever. Oh, and plus, was anybody surprised that Matthew Stafford played? I wasn't. I knew he was going to play because the guy plays in every game that he can. That's no surprise. There's no way he's sitting out of a meaningless game. It's just not going to happen. Now, do fans agree with that necessarily? Some don't. I mean, I don't mind him playing. I don't. That's just my personal view. I think that Stafford really wants to, reflect how a leader and how tough he is and all that, and he's loyal to the franchise. I totally understand that. I don't mind Stafford playing. And you know what? If he got hurt maybe a little bit in that game, they probably would have pulled him. But there's no harm in him playing out there. And I know he's been banged up the last couple games, but hey, he looked fine out there. 3 touchdown passes. A bad interception of Harrison Smith, but other than that, he looked good. Hey, maybe Stafford is auditioning for other teams out there if he wants to, leave to another team. Who knows? Some of the other guys out there also, I think, play, kind of for free agency. They audition just that last game kind of thing. So I don't mind these people not playing. And I know playoff teams, they don't play their starters because of rest, and I could totally understand that. We saw that with the Chiefs on Sunday against the Chargers. Patrick Mahomes, among some other starters, did not play. All right, so Lions losing 37-35, picking number 7 in the draft now. Last week we mentioned a couple positions that the Lions possibly would take as of now. Obviously that's going to change a lot probably once we get to April. We'll keep you more updated on that, especially when the new general manager and the coach comes. We're going to have some more insight on that. But I'm saying go receiver if Kenny Golladay or Marvin Jones or any of those guys aren't back. I think there could be like an elite X receiver that the Lions would need. Also, defensive line. Defensive line is big. They need somebody like Ndamukong Suh, because he was the last very, very dominant defensive lineman, I would say, for the Lions. I wouldn't even count Ziggy in that conversation. Ziggy got hurt a lot. I would say more so Suh, just that sheer domination. That is the guy that the Lions need. They also need a guy at linebacker who can really scan the field and really knows what to do in coverage, because a lot of these linebackers for the Lions are lost. Jelani Tavai, Jared Davis. I know Jared Davis isn't coming back, so that leaves a little opening for possibly a rookie linebacker. So we shall see very, very far in advance, but we'll have to see what the general manager and the coach are into as well. Speaking of general manager and coaching candidates, there's one general manager. He's from the Seahawks, John Schneider. There's been a big rumor about him from the Seattle Seahawks. And I know it's just a rumor, and Rod Wood on Tuesday talked about how he's not going to confirm or deny, if this is actually real or not. But John Schneider, I believe, does not have the final say on the personnel decisions in Seattle. He's been with the team since 2010 when Pete Carroll took over. I think Pete Carroll and him share the duties of picking players. But regardless, John Schneider is excellent, I feel, and he's found a lot of gems in the draft. I mean, Doug Baldwin undrafted, Richard Sherman in the 6th round, Russell Wilson in the 3rd round, people like that, players like that and they've really built the Seahawks team into a Super Bowl winner in 2013 season, and they've been to a couple, and they've really stayed consistent. So I wouldn't mind John Schneider coming over to the Lions. And especially from his experience, he's going to have full control now. I don't know how much of a difference that's going to be, but I would definitely be on board with Schneider coming. But it just really depends on how realistic it is. This is a true rumor because the Lions need a guy that's really, really good at evaluating talent. And I think it's very obvious that John Schneider has helped out in that process in Seattle, and somebody that's brings a lot of leadership. And I think John Schneider will bring that leadership that the Lions really need as their general manager. So, hey, if it happens, it happens. But if it can't happen, it's okay. I think there's a lot of other great general manager candidates out there. But it's hard to talk about certain general managers sometimes because, a lot of these guys, come from the scouting department and kind of the lower levels of the organization. So, look at Bob Quinn. I mean, he came from the scouting department in New England. So, not a lot. The coaches are the ones that are way more high profile because we actually see them, on the field and coaching but the general manager candidates, they come from a lot more different places because a lot of them are not retreads. They're not guys that have been general managers before. A lot of guys are, lower level and working their way up. You pretty much just get one shot at it. You don't see a lot of GM retreads out there. So that's probably why we don't hear of general manager candidates. We don't really know a lot of their names as much. I'm going to switch gears now to a head coaching candidate that kind of surfaced a couple weeks ago, about last week. It was Urban Meyer, former Ohio State, Florida coach, very, very successful college coach. And I'm going to tell you why he's not, N-O-T in capital letters, not a fit for the Lions. And I know that he's, maybe expressed a little bit of interest in coming to the NFL, but you got to remember, Urban Meyer has a very, very cushy gig at Ohio State. He retired as head coach, but he's the assistant athletic director. He's still involved with the football team. He still helps out Ryan Day and some of the players. He's still at every game watching and coaching and all that from the stands, I guess. So I think he really likes it there. And also, he's got his gig with Fox, and he's really, really good at what he does for Fox, with that pregame stuff. And if you ever check it out on YouTube, Urban Analysis, that's kind of like his little 5-minute series he does. I can't remember the guy's name that he does it with, but he's like an ex-Indiana coach or something like that. And he, dissects different things and talks about, recruiting process and, how to assemble a staff. And it's kind of the behind-the-scenes things about the game, little 5-minute segments. They're all over YouTube if you want to check them out. But he's obviously a very, very intelligent person and one of the best college football coaches of all time. But the problem is that his system is notorious for only working in college. It's not an NFL system. So guys like, you think of the quarterbacks that Urban Meyer has coached. Alex Smith at Utah. Okay, I think Alex Smith maybe was a little bit of a different circumstance because Urban Meyer was only there for 2 years. But, and Alex Smith, hey, he won a division championship with Washington on Sunday. But you think of the other guys like Chris Leak, Tim Tebow, and I love Tim Tebow, one of my favorite athletes of all time, but, didn't really make it as an NFL quarterback. Think of guys like J.T. Barrett, Braxton Miller. I mean, none of these guys really made it in the NFL in terms of a quarterback because Urban's system is tailored to whatever that quarterback's strength is. And if that quarterback, is not a deep ball thrower, he's going to adjust his offense to, the shorter passes. And in the NFL, you got to have a strong arm pretty much, And so I don't necessarily, I like that philosophy, but I just don't know if that would work necessarily in the NFL. And I think Urban just kind of wants his legacy at the college football ranks. You look at Nick Saban. What did he do as an NFL head coach? 2 seasons of waste in Miami, and then he took the Alabama job, and he's been Nick Saban ever since. So I know that there's some teams interested. I know the Lions were on that list, the Jaguars as well, but just because they're interested doesn't mean Urban Meyer is 100% interested. So just wanted to put that out there. I'm not really, I don't think it would, now if it happened, I mean, I'd be a little bit excited, I would say, but I'm not really on that train of having Urban Meyer as the head coach of the Detroit Lions. Going back to the Lions, Rod Wood, he had some comments on Tuesday about this football team, and this is why I like recording on Tuesdays, because I want to get as much Lions news as I can. You know, if I record on Sunday or Monday, I may be missing some stuff, and I'm definitely happy I recorded here on Tuesday because I would have missed some of these interesting Rod Wood comments. So it was interesting because somebody had mentioned, had asked him about the process, the general manager process, and what are they looking like? What are they looking for exactly in the general manager and coaching spot? And I thought this was an interesting comment that Rod Wood talked about, and he said that when they hired Bob Quinn and Matt Patricia, 5 years ago for Bob Quinn, 3 years ago for Matt EP, they were focusing more on accomplishments, past accomplishments, whereas now they're focusing more on a culture builder and a leader of a football team. That's interesting because, at least for me, because yes, very obvious Matt Patricia and Bob Quinn, all they were thinking about was, well, look at those Super Bowls. Look at all those championship rings that the Patriots have. These guys must be really good. If they're part of championship organizations, they must be awesome. Obviously, very, very con-like. They conned the Lions. They stole money from Allen Park. They were con artists. There was no focus on building a culture and leadership. Basically, it was arrogance. I think a lot of it was arrogance with them. They came from New England and they thought, well, we're just going to walk in and we're going to act like Bill Belichick and everything will be great. We're going to run our team just like his. And that doesn't work. They have no success. They have no evidence of success other than Bill Belichick. Nobody's going to listen to them. They would only listen to Bill Belichick. They're not going to listen to guys that have no proven track record and don't put their ego at the door. So if this is true with what Rod Wood says, I really like it. I really like how it's a culture and leadership based. And I think a lot of that has to do with Chris Spielman in the room and among maybe even Sheila. I mean, Sheila might be changing her mind about a couple things that maybe her parents wanted, but she doesn't want in a head coach or a general manager. So I'm definitely, like I said before, I'm giving this a whole chance. I'm giving this a chance for Sheila and Rod Wood to really step up and make the right decision for this football team. Also, I like what he talked about, the differences between last time and this time with general manager and head coaching searches. He talked about adding more people to the process because he said last time it was mostly, Martha and like one or two other people. Now they added Chris Spielman, a culture guy, a guy that's really going to come in and bridge the gap between football and the business side, a guy that they're really going to rely on for advice with his contacts in the league. And, his brother, Rick, I don't know how much Rick's going to help out in this, but, he definitely, for advice at least, to give Chris, but we shall see. And also more candidates, because as of this recording, they've interviewed 7 general manager candidates, and they're still going to look for more, once teams get eliminated from the playoffs, because due to NFL tampering rules, you cannot talk with or interview these guys until, their teams are eliminated. So like John Schneider with the Seahawks, they cannot talk to him, in a face-to-face meeting unless the Seahawks get eliminated. Yeah, only 3 candidates interviewed last time. So their search was a lot more narrow in 2016 than it is now. I like how they're just interviewing a lot more people. It just puts more people in the pot and have more options to choose from. And I love this approach that the Lions front office people are doing right now. There's just more people involved, as I said. And another thing he mentioned that I thought was interesting was picking. General manager is not just about picking players. Right? You got to be able to manage people. And I think maybe that kind of hinted at me. Maybe that's where they thought Bob Quinn would be a good general manager because, well, he's the director of college scouting for New England. And New England seems to just get all these, it's a football factory. They seem to get these guys from nowhere, all these gems, and they know exactly who to draft. And he's on top of it because he was the director of college scouting. He knows how to identify talent. He knows how to pick the right players. Okay, that's great. But can he manage people? Obviously, Bob Quinn could not manage anything because a lot of it, I think, has to do with the ego. You have to leave the ego at the door. You have to be able to manage everybody. You can't just be the guy that says, oh, I want this player, I want that. You got to be able to manage and take care of these guys. And at least from what Rod Wood said, I thought it was interesting because it seems like there's change. He's talking differently than he has in the past about this. In terms of a head coach, they want, at least from what I saw or what I heard, they want a guy with experience and, whether as a coordinator or a head coach, and be able to use that experience to build a football team with that culture and that leadership. And I'm 100% sold on this. If Rod Wood is telling the truth here, I'm 100% sold. I really like this mantra by the Lions. I really like this newfound focus that the Lions have put on the general manager and the head coaching search. So it'll be interesting to see who they're going to pick, because if it's going to be a culture guy, if it's going to be a guy that's leadership, he should really buy into the players and all that, and he should really know how to identify talent and how to manage that. So I think it's going to be interesting to really see what exactly is going to happen. Also, last comment that he talked about was kind of like a combination of retooling and rebuilding with the football team. Somebody had asked him, are you more retooling or are you more rebuilding with this? And you know what? I'm going to be honest, I agree with this. Look, 5-11, that's bad. That's bad. The defense was historically bad. But he did say, the Lions aren't as far off as some people may think. And before fans freak out about this, I'm just gonna give my opinion on this situation. The offense is not the problem. Okay, Matthew Stafford is still a good quarterback. He still has decent receivers. I know Kenny Golladay was hurt, but when he plays, he's great. He's a true threat, and his future is still up in the air, but who knows? Marvin Jones, his future is also up in the air. He had a great season for the Lions again. I know he may be a little bit slower now, but he's still, he had a great game against the Vikings, and I know that doesn't really matter, but in games past, he's been reliable. Danny Amendola, he's older, but I think he may be out of here this season. I think that slot receiver role is going to be to Quintez Cephas, and I think Cephas has a bright future. So, and there's the draft and free agency and all that. So I'm definitely giving these guys a chance when it comes to the receiver spot if Marvin and Danny and Kenny leave. I think the running back room is bright as well. DeAndre Swift, one of the more exciting players on this team. I think that's going to be the future. Who knows if Adrian Peterson resigns? I don't think, he said he doesn't want to be here for a rebuild, and there may be a little bit of period of rebuilding with this team. So, but still, even if he does resign, he'd be a great locker room presence, and that leadership really matters with these guys. And Kerryon, didn't get a whole lot of carries this season. I think his role has changed on this team. But I feel like you still have to give Kerryon a chance. I mean, he stayed relatively healthy this season. In the past, we've seen him go down with all kinds of injuries. And then, obviously, Pro Bowler TJ Hawkinson. I don't know why they never used Jesse James. They paid him all that money. Another Bob Quinn. The general manager's going to have to clean up all of Bob's mess. Clean up on aisle 6. Clean up Bob's mess. Clean up these bad contracts. Clean up the Patriot way. No more Patriot way. No more Detroit Patriots. A lot of cleanup that they're going to have to do. I would say more on the defensive side of the ball. That's going to need a whole bunch of retooling. I think Romeo Okwara is probably the only guy that I would 100% keep. I wouldn't keep any of those Patriot guys. Those guys are Patricia guys, and I don't know if they're necessarily going to fit with this new scheme, but who knows? I mean, you never know. But I know Trey Flowers' contract is huge. Jamie Collins has a decent contract. I mean, same with Desmond Trufant. I mean, some of these guys were hurt this season. Trey Flowers was hurt a lot. Desmond Trufant was hurt. I mean, and then Jeff Okudah was hurt a lot this season. I still think Jeff Okudah has a chance to be a good corner in the NFL. He was drafted that high for a reason. I mean, he was projected top 5 for whoever drafted him, not just the Lions. So I would definitely keep Jeff Okudah and Romeo Okwara among a couple others maybe, but for the most part, you got to retool. I mean, this was historically the worst defense in Lions history, giving up all those yards. This was even worse than the 2008 Lions. Think about that. Worse than the 0-16 defense in terms of yards and points and all that. Wow. That's tough to beat. And this was awful. And I know there was a lot of like Corey Unlin, he stepped in and it was bad. Bad on the defensive end. That's going to need a lot of rebuilding. Whereas the offense, I think maybe could just use a little retooling. Maybe get a couple offensive linemen here and there. Because that right side of the line, Tyrell Crosby was hurt a lot, and that the right guard spot is, don't even get me started with that. But we shall see what the new general manager and the new coach will have. I don't know exactly when they're going to be announced. Bob Quinn, I looked it up. He was announced January 8th of 2016. But I guess it depends because are they more interested in guys from other teams that are in the playoffs? They have to wait a little longer. Rod Wood said that there is no deadline on this. So I don't know if we're going to have to wait or anything like that, but we shall see. One final topic I wanted to talk about before we close out is the future of Matthew Stafford. And I want to just say this. Of course there's going to be a lot of talk about his future. I know he's got 2 years left on his deal, but he could opt out if he wanted and go to another team. Let me just say this. Matthew Stafford is a very good quarterback in the NFL. 16th all-time in passing yards and passing touchdowns. So from a statistical standpoint, we obviously know, pad Stafford and, all that padding his stats, But I still think Stafford, look at this. There are games in his career where he has played really well and the team still loses. But, it's the NFL. You blame everything on the quarterback. So even these losses you blame on Matthew. So he's going to get all the blame. But that doesn't mean that he didn't play well. He played well overall against Minnesota, but they just could not win the game. I mean, the defense let him down. The defense has let Stafford down a lot during his career. And I'm not saying that every loss has been on Matthew Stafford because there have been some losses where he has not played well. However, it's not every single one of them. The defense and some other players have let him down. And you had guys like Taylor Decker say, I want to be a part of this rebuild process, and to be honest, I think Stafford isn't in on that. I think he wants to be a part of this because by the time he's done, by the time his deal is done, I should say, he's going to be around 30. I think he's going to be 35 years old. So, obviously on the older side, but here's the thing. I still think Matthew Stafford has a couple years left of good football. And, some people think, well, this may take a couple years to rebuild in quotation marks. But I think this is what they should do. Focus a lot on the defense, rebuilding the defense. You're still going to have some offensive pieces there. Maybe by the time the Lions, get really, really competitive, that defense will be good. Stafford's going to be a veteran quarterback. And the defense won't be letting him down as much. So I just think franchise quarterbacks are so hard to find in the NFL. So hard. And, I mean, heck, you don't even know if Trevor Lawrence is going to make it in the NFL. I mean, there's so many hit or miss guys. And, personally, I think Trevor Lawrence will be a good NFL player. But, some of these other guys, like Trey Lance, Justin Fields, Ohio State quarterbacks, they never do well. And we talked about Urban Meyer's quarterbacks before, but in the NFL at least. But, other guys like Zach Wilson from BYU, Kyle Trask from Florida, Mac Jones from Alabama. I mean, I just think these quarterbacks are a lot of hit or miss. And I think Justin Fields and Trevor Lawrence, obviously, will be off the board before number 7, where the Lions pick. And I'm not necessarily comfortable with these other quarterbacks. And it's going to be Matthew Stafford's decision if he wants to leave or not. This is not going to be, okay, you're out of here, that's it, you can't say anything. No, if he wants out, he will go to ownership, he will go to Sheila or whoever the general manager is and say, I want out, I'm done. And if he does that, that's 100% okay. I totally can get that. But if he wants to stay and wants to be a part of this rebuild in quotation mark process, then I can see that. I can see why he wants to do that. I would be 100% supportive of it. That's my view of it. I know a lot of other fans may have a different view, but I just think at least there's a veteran presence at quarterback there, and there's guys that want to be here. There's guys that, Taylor Decker has already said it. Rod Wood has already met with guys. Chris Spielman has already met with guys. There's guys that want to be here. They care enough about this team. So it's going to be a very, very interesting future, though, especially with Stafford, because he could opt out and he could go to another team. We never know. I told you guys earlier, in a long time ago, always think about what Dan Orlovsky said, and he said it in the preseason and all that about Stafford's future, how he needs to go, and how this should be it for him in Detroit. Just remember that, because they are friends. It could become true. Who knows? Stafford he does not want to talk about that. He has been very, very open about that in press conferences. He does not want to talk about his future right now. That's something for a later date. But hopefully everybody enjoyed this episode. Just wanted to break down the whole Lions for you right now. We're going to sprinkle some basketball in the coming weeks, and we'll keep you updated on some Lions talk as well. But I definitely want to focus more on the winter sports. This is kind of a dead period for me as a sports fan, because Tigers haven't started up yet. They start late March, early April, and the Lions just ended, so it's a little bit of a dead period for the next couple months. But Michigan State, at least Michigan State basketball's there. We'll get some Michigan in there. Hopefully, getting some entertaining guests pretty soon, and we will probably have to focus on Lions a little bit more once the general manager and the coach have come. So hopefully, we'll get some guests on for that as well. But again, folks, thanks for tuning in. Wishing you everybody a happy and safe New Year, and thanks again for tuning in again to Open Mic Night.